Elon Musk just announced he's building data centers in space. Sounds visionary, right? Well, SoftBank CEO just publicly said he has serious doubts. And he's not alone. Major tech leaders are quietly questioning whether this idea actually makes sense. Today, we are breaking down why some of the world's smartest people think Musk might be chasing a fantasy. Think about how data centers work today. They're massive buildings packed with servers, sitting on solid ground. Connected by fiber optic cables, they are hot, they are loud, and they need enormous amounts of electricity. Musk's pitch is simple: put those servers above Earth's atmosphere where it's cold, and you get direct solar access. On paper, it sounds brilliant, but here's where it gets complicated. Sending anything to space costs an absolutely staggering amount of money. A single SpaceX Starship launch might run tens of millions of dollars. You'd need hundreds of launches just to build one space data center. Then you'd maintain it, upgrade it, and deal with space debris constantly threatening your equipment. Meanwhile, ground-based data centers are getting faster, colder, and more efficient every year. SoftBank's CEO isn't doubting Musk to be rude. He's pointing out what physicists have known for decades. Orbital data centers face challenges that money alone can't solve. And that's just the beginning of this story. Elon Musk has always thought big. SpaceX has completely transformed how we launch rockets and satellites. That part is real and proven. Starship is the most powerful rocket ever built, and his vision of making humanity multiplanetary is something a lot of people genuinely believe in. So when Musk announced plans for orbital data centers, people listened. The concept he's proposed is this: launch data servers on rockets, assemble them into a constellation of platforms orbiting Earth, and create a cloud computing infrastructure that's literally above the planet. The theory goes that being in orbit means cooler temperatures, unlimited solar power, and faster processing, because you're not bound by the physics of ground-based networking. On the surface, it sounds like the logical next step for a guy who's already changed space travel. But there's a critical difference between proving you can launch rockets reliably and proving you can build and maintain complex computing hardware that's constantly exposed to the vacuum of space, solar radiation, and cosmic rays. Masayoshi Son, the CEO of SoftBank, one of the world's largest tech and investment companies, didn't dismiss the idea with a laugh. He took it seriously enough to publicly question whether it actually works. When someone like that has doubts, it's worth listening. Because Son has backed some of the biggest tech bets of the last 2 decades, including massive investments in artificial intelligence and cloud infrastructure. Let's talk about what actually happens when you put electronics in space. First, there's radiation. Earth's atmosphere blocks a lot of cosmic radiation that would instantly fry unprotected computer chips. In orbit, your servers get hammered by solar radiation and cosmic rays all day long. You'd need heavy shielding, which adds massive weight, which means more expensive launches. Second, there's the thermal problem. Space is cold, sure, but it's also a vacuum. On Earth, data centers use fans to blow air over hot components. In space, there's no air, so you can't use convection cooling. You'd have to radiate heat away through specialized systems, which is complicated and less efficient than just turning on a fan. Third, there's latency. Yes, you're in orbit, but data still travels at the speed of light through fiber optic cables on Earth. A space-based server can't send data faster than ground-based cables. So you haven't actually solved the latency problem, you've just made it more complicated while adding points of failure. Fourth, there's maintenance. If something breaks on a ground server, you walk over and fix it in minutes. If something breaks on an orbital server, you need to launch astronauts, dock with your infrastructure, perform a spacewalk repair, and return. That's not hours or days, that's weeks and hundreds of millions of dollars per incident. These aren't small engineering challenges. These are fundamental physics problems that don't have easy solutions. SoftBank's Masayoshi Son publicly stated that he doesn't believe orbital data centers make economic sense. His exact concern was about the fundamental return on investment. The cost of launching and maintaining servers in space is so astronomical that you'd need decades of operation just to break even. And that's assuming nothing breaks. But he's not the only skeptic. Other cloud infrastructure leaders have privately expressed similar doubts. Some have even suggested that the idea sounds good in a tweet, but falls apart under real-world scrutiny. The consensus among data center engineers is that you're solving a problem that doesn't really exist using a solution that creates 10 new problems. Think about it this way: if you spent $50 billion launching data servers to orbit, you could instead build thousands of ground-based data centers in optimal locations worldwide. You'd get faster deployment, easier maintenance, better reliability, and you could upgrade your infrastructure yearly instead of being stuck with outdated equipment in space for the next 20 years. One engineer put it perfectly: space-based data centers are a solution looking for a problem. We've already optimized ground infrastructure to the point where Orbital doesn't offer meaningful advantages for the cost. That's not pessimism. That's experience talking. The financial reality is brutal. You can't hand-wave away physics with venture capital. At some point, the math either works or it doesn't. Let's do a direct comparison. A modern hyperscale data center costs roughly $5 to $10 billion to build and can process data for millions of users with incredible reliability. It needs employees, but operational costs per computation are incredibly low. An orbital data center would need $5 to $10 billion in build costs, plus $50 to $100 billion in launch expenses alone. That's just to get hardware into orbit. Then you'd need ground infrastructure to communicate with it, backup systems for failures, and engineers standing by 24/7 for emergencies. A ground-based data center achieves 99.99% uptime, 4 minutes of downtime per year. What uptime can you realistically achieve when your hardware is in space, exposed to radiation and debris, with no way to physically repair it without launching a rescue mission? Nobody's claiming orbital infrastructure matches that reliability. An optical signal travels through fiber at 200,000 kilometers per second. An orbital data center sits at most 36,000 kilometers high. Round-trip signal time is still measurable in milliseconds, not faster than ground fiber connecting cities directly. So you're paying 10 times more for worse reliability, no speed advantage, and constant catastrophic failure risk. From an engineering standpoint, it's incredibly difficult to justify. Here's what this skepticism really means. When major investors publicly question Elon Musk's ideas, it signals a change in how people evaluate his proposals. For years, Musk had almost unlimited credibility. This orbital data center criticism suggests that's changing. The AI industry desperately needs more computing power. Data centers are at capacity in many regions. Training giant language models requires enormous resources, and companies are fighting for GPU access, so there's a real problem that needs solving. But the solution doesn't have to be space-based. It could be more ground data centers in cooler climates like Iceland or Norway. It could be advances in chip efficiency. It could be better distribution of existing infrastructure. All of these are far more likely than orbital data centers. What this signals is that even visionary companies are asking harder questions about return on investment. In the AI arms race, money alone can't justify ideas. They have to work and deliver value. The space industry is incredible, but using it for data centers might be like using a spacecraft to deliver groceries. Just because you can launch something to orbit doesn't mean it's the right tool for the job. Let's talk about evaluating controversial tech claims. When someone proposes something audacious, here's a critical thinking framework. First, ask what problem is being solved. Orbital data centers promise speed and efficiency, but ground infrastructure already solves those and improves yearly. Is space-based computing necessary or a solution searching for a problem? Second, follow the math. Calculate cost per computation. How many launches? What are operational expenses? Can this ever compete with ground alternatives? If numbers don't work, innovation can't fix it. Third, consider maintenance. Can you realistically maintain sophisticated hardware long-term in space? Satellites fail and become junk. You'd be creating thousands of defunct servers in orbit. That's environmental disaster. Fourth, look at precedent. Has anyone built a space-based data center? If not, it's because engineers concluded it doesn't make economic sense. Nobody avoided this idea due to lack of imagination. Finally, distinguish vision from engineering reality. Elon Musk is genuinely visionary, but vision without feasibility is speculation. The best engineers solve problems that can actually be solved with realistic constraints. They don't build expensive solutions to problems that don't exist. Apply this framework to any bold tech claim. You'll spot hype, and fantasy far more quickly. Here's what this really comes down to. Elon Musk is brilliant and has genuinely changed technology, but being visionary doesn't mean every idea works. Sometimes the math just doesn't support the dream. Orbital data centers sound incredible and fit the narrative of pushing civilization forward, but engineers have looked at the numbers and said this doesn't make economic sense. That's not cynicism, that's experience. What matters is how the AI industry solves its computing capacity problem. Solutions will probably combine ground data centers, better chip efficiency, and smarter software. Boring stuff, proven stuff, things that actually work under real constraints. The space industry will advance for genuine applications, exploration, satellites, communications. But using it for data centers might be a dead end that wastes billions. The real story isn't that Musk proposed something crazy. It's that major leaders confidently say, we've evaluated this and it doesn't work. That signals maturity in technology evaluation. We are moving past hype toward reality. Watch how Musk responds to this skepticism. If he pivots to practical solutions, that's wisdom. If he doubles down against evidence, that tells you something important about his judgment in future proposals. What happens next might reveal whether orbital data centers was visionary or just expensive speculation.